Welcome to the 21st video in this series, making a 2D racer with Unity. In this video, we're going to use object pooling to instantiate our oil slicks. This will allow us to reuse oil slicks that have run out of their lifetime rather than reinstantiating and creating a brand new one each time we need one. To do our object pooling with the oil slicks, we're going to use Unity's built-in object pool type. And I think it's worth quickly describing to you how that works, because either you may never have seen object pooling before, or the implementation or the way that Unity do it is different to what you're used to. So what you do is you make an object pool, and initially it's empty. So this here in the green box is our empty pool. Then at some point an OilDropper will ask for an oil slick. So it will say to the object pool, please get me an oil slick. What the object pool will do is then create an instance of our oil slick, and that instance will be on the pool in a deactivated state. Now in the case of the first one, it'll immediately be needed. So it'll be created, added to the pool, then removed from the pool, and will become active in the game. Then the OilDropper carries on and says, I need another one of these. So the same process takes place. One gets created, added into the pool, then immediately taken out and is active in the game. Then let's say the same thing happens. We've now got 3 active in the game. Then let's say the first one runs out of its time, so it becomes inactive, and at that point it gets put back into the pool here. Now we have a pool size of 1. Then let's say this one, the same thing happens, and that gets put back into the pool, and now we have a pool size of 2. Let's say this one has a long lifetime, so it stays. The OilDropper carries on, and now it needs another one. So again, it asks the object pool, please get me one. And now we have 2 actually available on the pool here. So what it'll do is release one of these by reactivating it. And that's now in the game. And we have 1 of these on the pool. And basically, that's all there is to it. The dropper will ask the object pool for oil slicks, and it'll either create new ones as needed or reuse the existing ones from the pool. And to show you what this actually looks like, I've gone to the Unity documentation for the object pool here, and I'll put a link to this in the description to the video. And the reason I wanted to go here is because, whilst the documentation is really, really good here, there are a couple of quirks, I think anyway, in terms of the way things are named here, and it can be a bit confusing to understand what's going on. So what we're going to do is we're going to make a new object pool, just like here, and that'll be typed as our oil slick, and we'll call ours _pool, because that's my preference. And then in the awake, we'll create our pool just as it's done here. You'll notice here when we create it, there are a few parameters. So starting with the 2 at the bottom here, we have a default capacity of 10 and then a maximum size. So when the pool is first created, it'll make space for up to 10 of our instances. In our case, it'll be oil slick. In this case, it's game object. It'll make a space of up to 10 of those. And if we ever need more of those, it'll then adjust its size up to a maximum size of 50. So if you ever exceed that maximum size, so for example, let's say we've got on the pool already, we've got 50 oil slicks available or something like that. Then we try to release one back to the pool, then it won't actually put it into the pool because we're exceeding the maximum size. What instead will happen is that one will just simply be destroyed. So we have a default capacity we can set and then a maximum size that we want to allow of things to be available on our pool. And then we have various functions to manage all of this. So we have a create item function. So whenever we ask for an instance, so our oil slick in this case, if there isn't one already available in the object pool, then the create item is used to create one, and we're given that one. We can go down here and find the create item. Where is it? Here it is, the create item. So we can see it creates a new one, gives it a name, sets it active to false, and returns that game object. That will then be activated by the pool and given to us. Then we have the onGet here. That's actually what we use on the pool to actually get something from the pool. That's actually shown here, where if we press the space key, we do pool.get. The pool in this case will either create one or get one for us. And when it gets one, what it's simply doing with the onGet is setting active to true. Then when we're done with the object, so in the case of the oil slick, it runs out of lifetime. In the case of this example here, after 1 second, we can go down to the return after. We tell the pool to release this particular game object. That then invokes the onRelease here, which sets the game object active to false, and it's put back on the pool. So that's this function that we define here. What we're actually going to do is exactly the same as this example. We'll set active true and set active false. And then we have the onDestroy item. We need this one as well, because if we try to place something back on the pool and there isn't enough room for it, then we need to destroy it. And that's done then in the onDestroy item here, where we simply destroy the game object because we've already filled up our pool. And finally, we have another one, which is called collection check. And usually you leave that to true. And the comment here says help catch double release mistakes. Now it's slightly cryptic what it's saying here, but essentially when you've got lots going in your game, sometimes you can end up with a situation in your code where you're finished with a particular item, so you do the release, just like we are here, pool.release, but you end up doing it twice or more on the same game object. That would cause the pool to react with these releases twice or more for the same thing, and can cause a little bit weird behaviors. So by putting the collection check to true, it makes sure that you don't try and double release something, so you can only release something once. And that's really all there is to it. So we're going to go and set up something very, very similar to this now inside our code. So back inside Unity then, I'm going to right click on the scene here and just do game object to create empty, and we'll call this OilSlickPool. Then on the right hand side we can add components, and we'll add a new script here and call this OilSlickPool, create an add, and that can go into the hazards as well. And once Unity is finished whirring away, we can drop into VS Code. So in VS Code, I've got the OilSlick open here. And at the moment, what the OilSlick is doing is managing its own life cycle here with the lifetime and then our life routine and then destroying itself here. We're not going to need any of this anymore now. Instead, this is actually going to be managed by our OilSlickPool. So what we can do then is simply delete all of this code out of here. The only thing the OilSlick is going to do is tell a car that it's hit some oil. So we can save that. Now let's drop into the OilSlickPool. So inside here, we can get rid of the update to start with. And let's go to our OilDropper, because I think we've got some of the things we need at the top here. Yeah, so we've got our OilSlick prefab. We don't need that in here anymore because it's the pool that's going to be creating them. So we can cut that out of there. We do have some red. We'll come back and fix it. Let's go back to the OilSlickPool and serialize this. And then we'll serialize the default capacity. And we can also serialize the maximum size. And I'll put this at 50. I think that's what was in the documentation. That must be more than enough. Now we can create our pool. And to do that, we're going to need the Unity engine.pool. So at the top here, I'll add a using for Unity engine.pool. And here then we can add a private object pool. That'll be of type OilSlick. And we can call that then our pool. And then for a little bit of debugging, let's add some information in here. So we'll add a private int and we'll call this created count. And initially the value of that can be set to 0. So we're going to use that to keep track of how many we create. And we'll see that then in the debug logger so we can actually see the pool working. What we want to do now is inside the awake is we want to initialize our pool just like we saw inside the documentation. So we'll have our pool is equal to new and that'll be an object pool of type OilSlick. And I need the new keyword in front of that. So we're going to have then our create function and we'll call this create slick. We don't have it yet. Then we'll have our action on get, which we'll call on get. Then action on release, which we'll call on release. And then our action on destroy, which we'll call on destroy. But this already exists, so we'll call this on destroy item. Then we'll put the collection check to true. Then the default capacity is going to be our default capacity. And the max size is going to be then our max size. Okay, so that's the initialization then of our pool. Let's create the slick. And let's also create this one, and also this one. So here what we want to do is destroy the slick. And I said here, didn't I, that on destroy would conflict. Of course it won't, it's destroy, not on destroy. Nevertheless, I'll leave this as on destroy item. What we can do here is actually debug log this as well. So we'll debug log pull and destroy, and then we'll take the name. Then in the on release, we're going to deactivate the slick's game objects. We'll do slick dot and game object dot set active false. And in here we can also log this as well. So we'll do pull on release, and I'll take both of these and we'll drop these in the on get. Here we're going to set the active to true, and we'll do on get. And then finally, last but not least, we've got the creation here. So we'll increment the created count. Then we'll make ourselves a new OilSlick. So we'll say OilSlick and we'll call this slick is equal to, and then we want to instantiate our slick prefab. Then what we'll do is we'll give this a name. So we'll say slick.name. That's going to be equal to, we'll do a formatted string and we'll call this slick underscore, and we can use the created count. And we'll put a D2 in here, and then we can return our slick. What we can maybe actually do is log this as well, actually. So once we've done that, we'll say pool and create slick. We've got the slick.name, and we'll add the total as well. So just to recap them, because we've done quite a bit there, but it should be fairly straightforward. It's pretty much identical to the documentation. So we have the parameters at the top here. Here's our actual pool. Then we create an instance of our pool here with the references to the various functions. And then we've got the destroy, the release, the onGet, and the create slick. Now what we want to be able to do is we want to be able to actually access these functions from outside this class. So when an OilDropper actually wants to make use of the OilSlickPool. So we'll add here a public OilSlick and get. And here we use the get on the pool, so pool dot and get. And we'll also need to release from outside the pool as well. That's going to be controlled by the OilDropper. So we'll do public void and release. We'll take in an OilSlick, and I need to spell release correctly as well. There we go. And that will be then pool and release. So when you see this, you'll start maybe wondering, why do we have the on release defined here? Well, that's what will be invoked when we do this. And we've set that up here. And that now should be everything we need for our pool. Can't really demo it yet though. We actually need to use it to be able to demonstrate it working. So let's go to our OilDropper.cs. And it's in here we're going to control the lifetime. So what we'll do is we'll add a lifetime range. And we were having 10 seconds, I think, which is quite a lot. But I'll do something, say, from 4 seconds to 6 seconds here. And what we also want is access to our pool as well. So we'll put this at the top here. So it's going to be private. And this will then be the OilSlickPool. And we'll call this pool. And then we'll add some protection in the awake for this as well, actually. So we'll say if our pool is equal to null, then we'll add in some debug logging like this. So I'll drop this in here, and we'll say OilDropper is missing OilSlickPool. So we're nearly there now. The only thing we need to do now is look at the dropping of the oil here. So the update and everything is absolutely fine as before. That's all of the timings, the scheduling also. The issue we've got here is with the drop oil. We want to use our pool now. So we've got the offset, and then we've got our position. Now we need to get hold of an OilSlick, and we use our pool. So we'll say then that we've got an OilSlick, and we'll call this slick. That's going to be equal then to our pool and get. Then we can say the slick transform.position is equal to the position. And now let's get ourselves a random life range as well. So I'm going to do float, And we'll say that the life is equal to, and then we can get random dots and range. And we're going from the lifetime range X to Y. Now we've got one more issue, haven't we? And that's one here with the instantiation that we don't need anymore. So we can delete that because this oil slick has already been instantiated. It's something that we've just got from the pool. Instead, what we want to do is give it back to the pool once this lifetime has run out. So we'll write ourselves then a coroutine for this. So we'll say private IEnumerator return after. That will take in then our oil slick, which we can call slick, and a float, which will be our seconds. Then we'll yield return new wait for seconds. And once that's done, we can then release this. So we'll get hold of our pool.release and we'll release our oil slick. And then finally, last but not least, we can start this coroutine. So we'll do start coroutine, return after, sending in our slick and the life. Now I realize we've done quite a bit of code there, but really we kind of have to get it built for it to work. So we have our pool pretty much identical to what we have inside the documentation. And then we have an OilDropper here, which gets access via the inspector to the OilSlickPool. The timing works exactly as before. So once it's going, so once the race has started, etc., it'll start scheduling its drops. And when it wants to drop some oil, we calculate the offset, the position, exactly as before. Only difference is we now grab an instance of our oil slick from our pool. Remember that will create a new one if it doesn't have one available. We set the position of it, which means it'll then appear somewhere on the track in the next frame. Then we get how long we want it to last. We start a coroutine with this amount of time. And then when that coroutine finally finishes, we ask the pool to release this oil slick, which will put it back on the pool if there's space for it anyway. So let's drop back into the Unity IDE. Okay, so that has all compiled, which is a good sign. We've got a slot here for the slick prefab. So I'm going to click on the dot and it says none, which is rather handy. So I'll go to projects here and let's see if we can find the prefabs. There's the oil slick, so I'll drag that into there. We've got default capacity 10, max size 50. That's more than enough, I think, for what we need. Then we can go to our OilDropper here. Now we have a slot here for our pool, so we can drag and drop our pool into here. I'm going to put the drop time range here down quite low, actually. I'd like lots of slick so we can see the pool working. And then the lifetime range, we can leave actually 4 to 6 seconds, I think. Actually, let's make that maybe 4 to 8 seconds, so it's quite long. And the drop scatter doesn't really matter. The main thing is we now see the pool working. And to see this in action, I'm going to go actually to the race controller and up the laps more than 2, maybe to 10 here, actually. All right then, so the big thing to do with the drum roll now is actually to run this and see what's in the console. And there's been a fade there because I decided at that moment, rather than drum roll and to run it together, that I would check it is actually working, not to waste your time finding errors with this. And the good news is it is working. So what I've done here is actually dragged this up a lot so that we can see the console a lot better. And in the search here, I'm going to actually put the pool here so that we only see the pool output. Then run the game. Then we can press S to start the race and we'll start seeing the pool in action here. It's quite quick though, so we've got Slick 01 created and retrieved, Slick 02, Slick 03, Slick 04, Slick 05. There we go, 1 was released and immediately retrieved. And we can see 3 was released and then retrieved, 2's released, 4's released, then 2's been retrieved, 4's been retrieved. And you can see it definitely working. So we've gone up to 6 here. And despite the fact that we've had well over now 6 oil slicks used in the game, we've actually not gone beyond instance 6. So we are reusing our oil slicks as we need them here on the track over here. So that seems actually to be working really well, which is good. And hopefully yours is working as well. So I'll stop the game there and minimize this down a little bit. And that completes the OilDropper then. We've now gone from making our oil slick, also implementing the slip with the cars, to making a dropper, and now to using an object pool as well. As I said, we don't have that many oil slicks in this particular game, so an object pool really isn't strictly necessary for that, but I thought it was a nice opportunity to show you this because it is useful, particularly in games where you've got lots and lots of things going on, particularly with effects and bullets. They're kind of the classic use case. In fact, in this game, the bounce effect might be a candidate, for example, for an object pool because there's quite a lot of things being instantiated there with all its particles. But with that done, I think that's a good place to stop this particular video. And we've kind of done everything in terms of the track itself and the race going from start to finish. We have our hazards, we have our bouncing, and obviously we have our laps and lap times and things like that. We're not quite complete with the track though. There's one more thing to do, and that's to add some sound into here because it's a little bit empty without it. So next video then, we'll take a look at some audio. As ever, thanks very much for watching this one. Comments, questions, welcome as always on YouTube.